The next morning, I woke frightened that what had happened at mediation may make Johnston angry, as I couldn't remember most of the events. I believe Johnston called me that morning to see if I was still alive. After all, my fingers had turned a dark purple, and due to lack of oxygen, I could die in my sleep. Johnston knew where I lived and where my children lived. If he was unhappy and wanted revenge, I couldn't remember everything. I texted as friendly as I could to protect myself and my children. Later that week, upon discussing events with Evans, my divorce lawyer and all, that happened was not what I remembered. I told them that I wanted the agreement voided for the abuse that I experienced. They refused. This confused me, as they were supposed to be representing what I wanted. I was sent an email from Michelle Boer that could have been Sherry Evans acting as Michelle Boer based on email properties. And that email claimed that I could not revoke an agreement even under the abuse and coercion that I experienced. I was confused, as I did not feel as if my own lawyers represented me or were going to represent me according to my wishes. Zucker then sent a memorandum that was sworn and attested to multiple times as true, which I mentioned earlier as confession email, and discusses the alcohol being served to me, and then repeatedly victim blames me for being abused. And then ends with multiple threats, including no longer representing me if I contest, and then even threatens my pharmacy license. Zucker even admits asking for a martini. All these actions form the characteristics of emotional abuse. But why would they be trying to persuade me with emotional abuse instead of representing me and acknowledging this abuse? Were they protecting someone and needed my signature? It was not until 2018, when I received my case files, that I discovered Zucker was not the sole author, but Boer and possibly Evans contributed to the memorandum, and they were not even at mediation. How could Boer have added areas to the confession email when she was not even there? Unless this was made up to further intimidate me and threaten me to comply to a signed printed version of the agreement that I told Zucker that I never wanted to sign. And the printed version does not look like the draft agreement and adds full releases for any liability for the actions of Brady, Frankfurt, and all lawyers involved in these events. The printed agreement successfully completes Bergman handling my claims against Brady and most likely Frankfurt as well. The problem for them was that I refused to sign the printed version, requested them to stop working on the agreement, which they ignored, and on November 20th of 2015, I told them via email to void the agreement and thus revoked the agreement. Instead of my lawyers working for me to revoke the agreement as I requested, they continued to threaten me, telling me that the opposing attorneys will most likely file for summary judgment on the mediation agreement, which lets the judge conclude the mediation agreement as valid without me signing it. They also threatened me with more legal fees. They further threatened by stating that if I refused to sign, Evans and Boer and Zucker, my divorce and corporate attorneys, would withdraw and not represent me for the summary judgment. I must find a new lawyer to defend me against this agreement. And they did withdraw. I have an email where Evans tells Zucker that family court has a remedy that allows the judge to enter judgment without my signature. Zucker responds that Bergman does not do many family court mediations and did not include the clause. The code is a 6.602, which states that the agreement is not revocable. If left off, I can revoke the agreement without further litigation. This is what I did. But none of the lawyers then or later fought for me to be free of the agreement, and consistently led me to believe that I was bound to the agreement until I realized on my own in November of 2018 that having revoked the agreement, it had always been invalid. And such was confirmed multiple times from unaffiliated lawyers to this case. Hence, I was lied to, misled, abused, threatened, and forced into expensive litigation that depleted my savings, forced me to mortgage property to continue to pay legal expenses, and all the while, the agreement was invalid on the day I revoked it on November 20th, 2015, less than a month after mediation. Why? Of all the lawyers involved in my case up until recently, why didn't they represent me? Who were they representing? Was protecting Brady and Frankfurt so important as to mislead me, abuse me, and threaten me into states of despair and sickness? Or was there more than just protecting Brady and Frankfurt? A couple of weeks prior to the summary judgment written by Brady, the man who I had justifiable legal claims against per Zucker, and whom this agreement would have released from liability, I found Rodney Castile, currently unemployed lawyer, to represent me at this summary judgment on the mediation agreement. Castile stated that he did not understand the issue as the agreement lacked form for its own, without bringing in the fact that alcohol was served at mediation and coercion. After the hearing, just outside the courtroom, Castile called me to say that Judge Warner denied the summary judgment and could continue. Castile said that he was completely amazed that he had never seen a lawyer look so shocked at the refusal of a summary judgment as Brady did, as if Brady was positive that she would sign it. During our conversation, Castile also said that Zucker and Brady wanted to talk to him. He hung up on me and never told me what was said. Castile was in between jobs when I found him, so I was happy to have him. A month or so later, Castile said that I had to go to mediation again because I disagreed with the agreement. Unknown to me until 2018 when I received my case files, Bergman set a date for a second mediation in May of 2016 with Castile, Frankfurt, Brady, and for some strange reason, Evans and Borer and Zucker, whilst Evans and Borer and Zucker had withdrawn from representing me a month earlier. If you remember, Evans and Borer and Zucker decided not to represent me weeks before the hearing if I refused to sign the agreement, and I refused. So, why would lawyers who withdrew from representing me be at another mediation? And who would they represent? They were not representing me as they had withdrawn. Were they there to represent themselves and what they did to me? At any rate, I canceled this mediation because I did not believe that I could get into the car to go to mediation, much less go. I had developed extreme anxiety and fear from the 2015 mediation events. Less than a month or so later, Castile had hired on with Bruce Jameson's law firm, in which they wrote multiple pleadings on many of the same issues with Brady, causing me to lose even more money and run my credit cards to the maximum. In some pleadings, they even acknowledged that the agreement lacked the irrevocable statement, allowing me to revoke. But they did not seek summary judgment on that fact alone, and instead threw in multiple other reasons. In December of 2016, another mediation was court-ordered for the agreement that I refused to sign, and included Bergman. However, before this mediation, Jameson subpoenaed the banks, and I discovered in November 2016 multiple checks of a century directly deposited into Johnson's own company accounts and asset diversions within 5 minutes of seeing the bank records. This was brought up at the mediation where Jameson told Bergman that Johnston was a very bad guy. My case against Johnston was very valid. Unknown to me, as neither Castile or Jameson or my new divorce lawyer, Adam Morris, told me, was that the agreement was void after 1 year for not being acted upon. In other words, the agreement was void on October 30th of 2016. Yet we still went to mediation with all the legal expenses, and the legal expenses continued. So not only was the agreement revoked when I revoked it on November 20th of 2015, but was also void for not being acted upon on October 30th of 2016. And absolutely no one told me this, and instead continued this lie, leading me to believe that I had to continue putting out money and thus prevented me from rightfully gaining my company, already fully known to have experienced monetary diversions under the same person now running it.